Welcome to the National Women's Fitness Academy podcast. We're here to talk about women's health, female hormones, body image, and all things health and fitness.
I want you to meet SJ, a unique trading mentor and a financial coach who goes beyond traditional advice. She believes personal finance is more than just numbers. It's an exploration of the emotions and behaviors behind our financial choices. Her approach delves deep into the psychological currents shaping our money decisions. SJ's philosophy is simple. It is about mastering personal finances that starts with understanding of our psychological behaviors, and she excels in guiding individuals through biases, fostering successful savings and budgeting. She's so passionate about revealing the intricate link between psychology and finances choices. And SJ's journey goes beyond the typical advice. She encourages clients to confront their fears, brave adversities, and take control of their destinies. I am truly honored to have her on board for today's podcast, as it takes time and consistent effort to build a foundation. And with her as a guest, get ready for a transformative journey that will redefine your way of looking at finances and understanding and reshaping your path to your personal success. I'm so thrilled to have you on board. And with the introduction that I have given you with what the girls need to know is that you're a trading mentor and a financial coach. And I would love for us to start this conversation with what is your experience from mentoring clients, the psychological behaviors that you see that lead to significant breakthroughs with their financial decision making?
Okay, good question. First off, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. So I think when it comes to finance, right, everyone acts as if managing money begins with knowing what investment to invest in, what account to have, and then they worry about the mindset changes later. And it's those exact reasons, like that process, that I'll do the investment stuff first, work on the mindset stuff later. This is why everyone fails to make the most out of their money. So when it comes to blending psychology and personal finance in my mentoring, this came from a really simple realization that money isn't actually just about numbers. It's about behavior. It's about emotions. It's about deeply held beliefs. Okay. And what I noticed that traditional finance often misses, like all the financial gurus of the world, they're very masculine, it's a very male dominated field. And what I see missing is actually the human element. Okay, because what traditional finance does is it focuses on the mechanics of money management without actually considering the psychological factors that drive our financial decisions. So I guess it's understanding why we spend, why we save, why we invest, like why we do all of that is really crucial, because all of our financial habits, they're deeply intertwined with emotions, upbringing, real life experiences, trauma, all of those things. So by integrating psychology, my aim is, I guess, to offer more of a holistic approach that also just, the aim is to just help people, men, women, couples, whoever, kids even. I work with a lot of teens to not only just manage their finances, but also just get a grip of their financial behaviors, right? Because that is the only way that people can make lasting changes, in my opinion.
With the behaviors side of things, because you've mentioned it also comes from the upbringing. There's like trauma behind it. There's the childhood aspect. What are some of the negative aspects of behaviors that you notice, and how do you help someone create more of a positive relationship with their finances?
Okay, so can I speak for my work specifically?
Yeah.
Okay, so the foundation of transformation in personal finance lies in, we want to create a space that's completely free of shame and completely free of blame, right? So when I'm working with someone, we want to prioritize, firstly, establishing a safe, non-judgmental environment, because this is where, you know, people can freely express all of their challenges, all of their fears without the shame, without the blame, because those two things are people's go-to responses. And so my job here is just obviously actively listening, right? My job it's not to validate people's experience. Like I'm not a validator at all. I don't really believe in that. I don't feel I need to do that. But I do make sure that people feel heard and understood and confident that change is actually possible for them, because a lot of people just think that their situation is their situation forever. So for a lot of people, understanding their financial behaviors involves exploring their past, including their upbringing, any deep-seated beliefs about money. Diving into childhood stuff can be, you know, insightful, but I often find that just a general exploration of the past is quite sufficient, because as a trauma counselor, we need to be sensitive. We need to recognize that many different individuals have different types of financial trauma. And so with that, we need to actually build emotional intelligence around finances. That's always the first step, right? So this involves teaching people to recognize and manage their emotional responses to money, such as anxiety, impulsiveness, as two examples, right? So we want to explore how emotions like that influence spending decisions, financial decisions, and then help them develop strategies for a healthier, more mindful relationship with money. When it comes to, like, we need to address this stuff first, because, like, in terms of, you know, integrating practical financial education, that's obviously important. It's essential, but we can't just go straight to that, because that is what traditional finance does. So when we do this, we want to kind of just like demystify the basics of personal finance, because then that reduces anxiety and it empowers people. And with this understanding, it helps people feel more in control of their financial situation. So, you know, my experience with both wealthy, very wealthy people, and also people who are struggling financially, it's shown me that the quality of life that someone has isn't necessarily correlated with the amount of money one has, but rather how they manage it and how they relate to money, because money is such an emotionally charged topic, right? It makes people feel, most people are very avoidant with it. So I guess, you know, personal growth is central to my philosophy. A lot of, you know, even in my own life, a lot of my own darkest times, like I haven't always been good with money. I'm completely financially independent now, financially free in that term. But I've rebuilt and I've kind of, you know, fortified my own psychology because of my experience. So yeah, I think it also helps to learn from people who have kind of been where you are and know the way out, because a lot of people who have just been maybe come into money have always been okay with money. They don't necessarily have financial trauma as a kid, like their upbringing was pretty okay. They can't relate.
Mm.
You know, we don't always want to relate, but we want to be, you know, somewhat compassionate and understand that everyone, like, finance is just not a cookie cutter. It's not a one size fits all environment. It can't be that.
It's so interesting that we're diving into this, because before we started recording, we were mentioning how too often there's certain individuals who want to earn a certain amount of money and expect to earn that certain money within a certain limit of time. But as you said, there's so many other concepts to actually making that wealth and actually sticking to it and making more wealth. And I would love to know from your experience, like, where was there a time in your life where you're like, fuck, I'm in like a shithole with my finances. Where do I go from here?
So 2015 was the worst year for me financially. Now, full disclaimer here, I wouldn't say I had financial trauma as a child. I grew up with a family where my parents were business owners, built very successful businesses. However, what my parents taught us was the value of a dollar. You know, like, we never were entitled to money. We always had to work for it. Like, my first job was at 12 or 13 in a little country supermarket, you know, getting my little pocket money in an envelope. So we've always had to work for money. It was never just handed to us, things like that. So I also understand my privilege there. I'm not going to negate that, because some people didn't have that. Some people grew up in some very horrific environments where, scarcity was their reality, poverty was their reality. So with that in mind, 2015, I've always had a entrepreneurial bone. Like, don't ever hire me. I'm the worst employee ever. Um, yeah, not good. So 2012, I entered the kind of online entrepreneurship world. That was what I knew I wanted to do. 2015, I had my first subcontracting business and it failed. Basically, the guy we were working for didn't pay us. And so whilst there was a lot of things out of my control then, the fact that I didn't manage money when I had it was what made my situation far worse. Okay, because what people do when they get money, they spend it. I didn't manage it, had no savings. So the result of mismanaging my money when I did get paid left me with no emergency fund, left me in a situation where I was 3 months in rental arrears. I had every disconnection notice possible. My real estate was like, you need to leave. Got evicted. Yeah, absolute shit show. Like, my dogs were eating better than I were, basically. Yeah, that was a very, very dark time for me, but it wasn't a situation that crippled me, right? Instead, it absolutely fired me up, because I'm one of those people that work extremely well under pressure. I think pressure is a privilege. And so for me, like, even though my back was up against the corner, I was just like, let's get the fuck out of here, like, get the shovel, let's dig our way out of the hole. So I think the thing that's important to note there is I didn't become a victim of my circumstance. I actually thought it was such an empowering situation that even though it was just like, how the hell did I get in this situation in the first place? The first step to changing anything is releasing shame, releasing blame, and taking flat out responsibility for the situation, whether it was in your control or not. And that's exactly what I did. So I was actually learning to trade at this time. That was when I first started my trading career, and I was just learning online from YouTube. Very difficult to do that because there's so much information out there. But yeah, I basically moved to Brisbane, got a job in retail. Didn't see that at all as a step backwards, even though my subby business had failed. Most people would be like, oh, poor me, my business failed. Oh, now I have to go get a job. Me, jobs are so powerful. Jobs for me is to pay your bills, businesses, trading, that's for wealth creation, right? So that was my mindset. I was like, I'm just going to get a job so I can just pay my bills. It's not forever. So yeah, got myself out of a situation and have pretty well flourished ever since that moment. So that was fast forward to 2016. But 2015, darkest year financially for me. Embarrassing. What 25-year-old is in this situation? I was in it.
It's so interesting that we're opening up about this, because you mentioned we want to take the shame and the blame away from all of this. And you've literally just been so vulnerable sharing your experience. And I do feel as though there's going to be many people relating to this situation. And I can relate to that on many levels, because at my early 20s, I was in debt because I was grabbing credit cards from the bank. I had no money literacy whatsoever. I wasn't told how to control my money. So every time something came in, like yourself, I would just spend it and then be in debt with it. And then one day I just had this massive bill to pay. And I was just like, okay, $30,000 in debt. What the fuck? How do I get out of this? And again, I think it just, as you mentioned, it's taking that empowering mentality, going, cool, I just put myself in this situation. The only way out is actually paying that debt and moving forward from that. Too often people end up with that debt their entire life, because they're not money savvy enough to understand what's happening, or they feel that guilt of getting stuck in that shame and blame. So when we're confronting these fears, like, how do we guide someone to navigate these psychological hurdles around their finances journey? Because, you're the expert with this.
Yeah, good question. I think it's until we understand why we spend, why we save, and why we invest. We need to understand why we do those things, because all of our financial habits, they are deeply intertwined with emotions, upbringing, and life experience. Okay. So I guess my approach to this, to blending psychology, to blending philosophy all into personal finance, it stems from a deep belief that the foundational role of philosophy of psychology and personal finance is philosophy. Okay, because at its core, personal finance isn't just about numbers. It's not just about strategies. It is about understanding the psychological elements of our relationship with money. So I emphasize personal finance philosophy here. Like, we're not going to go all stoic on everyone. We're not going to do that. But basically, like, philosophy, right, in a broad sense, is the study of fundamental questions about existence, about knowledge, about values. It's about reason. It's about the mind. It's about the language that we use, right? So philosophy involves critically examining beliefs, examining concepts, and kind of exploring these abstract ideas to understand the relevance in application in everyday life. Okay, so when we apply philosophy to personal finance, our philosophy then acts as a guiding framework for all of our financial decisions, right? It involves contemplating your own values, your own goals, or your beliefs about money. And then it's about aligning those financial behaviors and decisions with those principles. Okay, so the philosophy, oh my gosh, how do I say that word? The philosophy, oh my gosh, there's always one word whenever I do presentations or in my own, I can't say. The philosophical, there we go, we got there, approach to personal finance. It just encourages people to reflect on deeper questions that, what does money even mean to you? What do you value the most in life, right? How can you use your resources of time? So whenever I say resources, I'm referring to three things: time, energy, and money. How can we use those three guiding things, because that's what life is made up of, to fulfill our values, right? So it's by integrating philosophy into personal finance, that's where people can then make more thoughtful, purpose-driven choices about how they earn their money, how they save their money, how they spend, and then how they invest. And it's without this philosophical foundation, this is where people find themselves really having goals that aren't even theirs. That they find themselves chasing other people's dreams, oscillating between all these different investment advices, and they're just genuinely unsure of what's best for them because it's so noisy. Mm. It's so noisy, So I guess in my work, I take a different path from the usual financial advice out there, because a lot of what you hear in the finance world, it's regurgitated shit, right? It's Googleable. It makes you feel good in the moment. It's very Band-Aid like fixes, right? So the traditional finance advice out there, it's more about calming that little voice in your head that says, I should be doing something with my money, rather than actually getting to the heart of why we do things with our money. Okay, because this usual way of doing things, it's the thing that gets us off path. It leads us astray. It's kind of like putting a blindfold on and we're just ignoring what is right in front of us because it's uncomfortable to see, so we avoid it, right? So I guess this is why I'm really passionate about weaving psychology into the fabric of personal finance. You want to peel back the layers, you want to look beyond the Band-Aid solutions, and you want to really dive into understanding your relationship with money. It's definitely not about following rules. It's about creating your own rules that matter to you. That's kind of what it's about.
You mentioned 2 points about how certain people speak about finance, where it's more like a Google-based idea of how to manage it. And then obviously there's the other aspect of it. Can you give us some examples of someone who would just regurgitate Google type of like finance stuff to actually the most important shit that they need to be doing?
As in like people who are influential in the industry?
Yeah.
Or...
Yeah. Or just examples of like, me asking you for advice and you just give me like spill out something, but I could have easily just found that on Google.
Oh, okay. Dave Ramsey. Let's stay away from that. That is very bro fucking advice. Okay. I think the important thing to really understand here is wealth creation, right? Like when we're discussing the intricate relationship between psychology, financial choices, right? It's really crucial to understand that our financial behaviors are deeply influenced by everything. Okay. So when it comes to wealth, I guess to answer this question in terms of what advice would I give, this is going to be annoyingly simple. Building wealth is actually so easy. Getting your money shit together is so fucking easy. It doesn't require luck. So this is the stuff that I guess is regurgitated, but this is what I agree with. It doesn't require luck. You don't have to be a genius. You don't need, special hookups and connections, right? It's two very easy to understand questions. One, make more than you spend and invest the difference wisely. Pretty simple. The second one would be you need to develop simple habits, simple daily habits that result in wealth accumulation, right? So the first one, basically, so the first one of make more than you spend and invest the difference wisely, right? I am not the coach to tell you to cut out your $5 lattes, right? A lot of traditional finance out there is about cutting back, cutting back, cutting back. I don't know if everyone knows, but the cost of living is pretty expensive, right? It's actually nothing to do with your $5 latte, right? We've got, we can consider interest rates, inflation, all that stuff, but that doesn't really have to be a part of this conversation. I think what matters is instead of cutting back, look at increasing more, because you can only cut back until you feel fucking so restricted and so unhappy, right? I know for me, my morning coffee is one of the most regulating things I can do for my nervous system. It is something I genuinely look forward to whenever I'm feeling some kind of way. Like, I'm never going to tell a mum who's stressed with 10 kids running around to not go and buy a coffee if that's the thing she needs in that moment. I'm never going to tell someone to do that, right? But a lot of the science is, drop your avocado toasts, don't do your lattes, right? That's not going to make a fucking dent. So we actually need to stop thinking about cutting back and consider making more. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is, the whole concept around make more than you spend and invest the difference wisely, right? That sentence basically just summarizes how to manage your finances and so that you can then grow your assets, right? It explains the importance of creating positive cash flow that you then invest to produce additional positive cash flow. And it's so simple. It's comprised, that sentence of make more than you spend and invest the difference wisely. There's 3 parts to this single concept: spend less, earn more, invest the difference wisely. Okay. There's plenty of variations on how to achieve this objective, but they all kind of follow 2 simple themes, right? You can reduce spending immediately through various forms of frugality. Okay. You can also increase your income through various strategies, changing jobs, negotiating pay raises, right? That is something I love helping people do. One of my clients last year ended up negotiating a $20,000 pay raise. They were about to lose their house, and this pay raise was the thing that stopped them, right? So I love teaching people how to negotiate. You can start a business. In my opinion, as much as I don't think everyone is cut out to be an entrepreneur, I do believe, it's a learnable skill. For example, someone like my hubby is a classic example. He's an artist, big murals, commission pieces, doesn't have an entrepreneurial bone in his body. He hates that stuff, hates the back end processes, hates, money. And it's so funny, we're married, hates money. Yet he's so creative. And that's a very common theme with creatives. They don't like that end of it, but there's still, I do that side of it for him. He could learn, but I'm like, just fucking go do it. I would rather see him thrive in his artistry than crumble over the back end business stuff. Okay. So he's very lucky that he has me. But I think, I guess in the short of that is you've got to create the gap between how much you earn and how much you spend, that then results in savings to invest to then gain additional income, right? So the twin themes of obviously spending less and making more, they're not mutually exclusive, but they do require completely different mindsets, right? Like I believe, there's something I live by, especially when people start making money, is they get a bit of lifestyle inflation. That is one of the things that will cripple someone before anything else, right? They start making more, so they spend more. They want to keep up with the Joneses. They want the best of the best. For me personally, even I have a very wealthy network. Frugality was their path, right? Frugality is about, there's a difference between frugality and cheap, right? But frugality is about living on less, but it requires a lot more self-discipline. So for most people, there's a feeling of sacrifice when they follow this path. Therefore, they don't stick to it. They don't really succeed in it. But if that's someone, I don't know if that's anyone listening, then frugality is definitely a slow and it's a difficult path to wealth, because there's a constant battle between lifestyle desires and then financial freedom goals, right? And so with this, it's really important that your money has a goal, that you have goals for your money. Your money needs a purpose. Your goal can't just be, I want to make 10K this month, or, I want to, do this so I can then do that, right? Our money needs a purpose. Otherwise, there is no difference between you doing what you do now and you working at Macca's. Absolutely no difference. Like, it needs a purpose. You need a why. So I guess, frugality is, for me, frugality is such a pleasurable journey because I love a simple life. I don't like clutter. I don't like, luxury things do absolutely nothing for me. Absolutely nothing for me. Fulfillment, I guess, for me comes in experiences. It comes from travel. It comes from memories, creating those, not in I've got a 2011 RAV4. It is perfect and it's basically apocalypse safe. So I'm not upgrading to a push start button for that reason. But yeah, I don't necessarily, like, in terms of the traditional stuff, the Googleable stuff, I don't necessarily agree with the usual budget conversations. What I prefer, and what I see work a lot more is actually value-based spending plans. So, obviously, to get better with money, budgeting is a critical aspect of personal finance, but it's very common for people to struggle with sticking to their budgets, because I guess this difficulty just it arises because traditional budgeting, it feels restrictive, just like, all your fitness people, it's like being on a strict diet, right? So just as overly restrictive diets can lead to binge eating if someone doesn't have a healthy relationship with food, then I guess overly restrictive budgets can lead to impulsive spending sprees because they don't have a healthy relationship with money, right? Philosophy. Okay. So I guess it's this sense of deprivation that comes with cutting out all of the non-essentials. That can be really demotivating. It can make people feel like they get a bit of FOMO, like they're missing out. And every purchase then becomes guilt. And if you spend, you then feel shame and then you blame, so it's actually not surprising most people abandon budgets. So I guess the alternative approach that what I feel aligns much better with most people is personal values and goals. So incorporating those into what I like to call a value-based spending plan. And this concept basically shifts the focus from what you can't spend to what you truly value spending money on, right? So it's more so about making conscious choices that aligns with your spending. Sorry, that aligns your spending with your value system, whether that's travel, whether that's, I don't know, hobbies, whatever it is, investing, mentorship, all the things. So value-based spending just allows a more flexible, a more human, right? A more human approach, a more realistic approach to managing finances, because it recognizes that life isn't just about cutting out the lattes, right? Life isn't about just saving and cutting costs. You actually got to live your life and you've got to enjoy your life. And by aligning your spending with values, it helps you do that.
Wow. Let me just like sink all of that in. And I'm sure our listeners are probably like mind blown right now. I love the fact that you started off the conversation about how it's not about cutting it out and budgeting it that way, because I've been through that transition and I used to feel so guilty and shameful for not, not grabbing my morning coffee because I was aiming to budget and save. But then it just perpetuated to this negative relationship with money. And every time I would go and have a coffee, the guilt will come in and be like, oh, but you're not budgeting. What do you mean you're getting your latte? So it's such a good way of looking at it. And hopefully our listeners are having this bold moment going, okay, it's not about the fucking latte. It's not about the avocado on toast. And as you mentioned, everyone has like various stresses in lives, and it's looking at a different way of saving and budgeting that as well. It's such a cool way of looking at it because you've seen it firsthand. It looks as if people are still on that old mindset around money, saving, and budgeting. So it's no wonder we've been going through this cycle of like the shame and blame, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's, value-based spending is more so about mindful spending. It's, you can have your morning coffee, but do you need the second or third one at lunch or afternoon tea? Do you know what I mean? Like that's more so what it's about. It's, don't get me wrong, like one of the first exercises I get people to do is a financial audit. I have every bill. I'm by what definition of financial independence? I am that, I have passive income that covers all my bills. I'm mortgage free. So I think the important thing is you do want to get like the only way to build, okay, think about it like this, everyone listening. If you behaved in everyday life with money in your personal relationships, whether it's friends or romantic, what would those relationships be like? So if you're hot and cold, if you're avoidant, if you're scarce, if you're shame and blaming, if you're restrictive, right? I want you to apply the exact same feelings, emotions, thinking to personal relationships. It's the same. You are in a relationship with money. You are in a relationship with food. It's not food's fault you're fat. It's your relationship with food. It's not money's fault you're broke. It's your relationship with money. That's honestly what it is. So if you can try and treat money the same thing, you want to value it, you want to respect it, right? You want to mindfully use it. So one of the first things I do, like I still do financial audits fortnightly, which means I get my statements out, I grab my highlighters, and I go to town. And I will highlight different categories: needs, wants, bills, frivolous shit. Know where your money's going, right? You can't change anything in your financial situation if you don't have awareness to what it is that you're doing. So I do that. And people to this day don't do that, even though they know it's going to help them, because they can't sit with the honesty. People don't have a money problem. They have an honesty problem. If you could just get honest and sit with like honesty, like truth and honesty does not have to equal shame. So I think if the everyday person actually worked on their relationship with shame, go study Brene Brown. She is the shame queen, right? You would feel so much better in everyday adulting things, because honesty, if people could just sit with the honesty of, okay, I fucked up here, and not go into context, not go into story, not go into the shame or the blame, or I did this because they did that, or now I'm a piece of shit because now I overspent, you would fucking make progress. People can't deal with uncomfortable feelings. They want to feel good all the time. And reminder, that's not life.
Yeah.
That's not life. So if people could get, a saying that I use in my world is what you don't track, you can't measure. Right? You can't change what you're not aware of. And if you are aware and don't change, then that is now a choice. Can people just sit with that? That maybe they're choosing to be financially ignorant because they don't want to sit with the feelings of uncomfortability without adding story, context, shame, and blame.
Wow. being truly vulnerable and honest here, there has been several times where I was avoidant with those situations due to not wanting to feel those uncomfortable, fearful, shameful, blameful mindset around that. And it's so interesting that we're like diving deeper into this because I know a lot of people can relate to this fact. And I love how you use the analogy of what's your relationship like with, friends or intimate partners, because if it's hot and cold, like guess what, it's going to be a reflection of any other area of your life. But too often people don't speak about that, or they're not aware enough, and then they just live life as it is, thinking, oh, okay, well, this is how it's going to be for the rest of my life, I might as well just continue. But yeah, as you mentioned, it's being mindful of those actions and how can you change that story. And when you started talking about mindful spending and your values, I feel as if there's this like big fog around certain people's heads where they think they need to spend certain amount of money on certain things because other people are doing that. And as you mentioned, like fame doesn't necessarily mean you driving a fucking Maserati. If that's what makes you happy, cool, and that's what you value, the materialistic things, fucking go for gold. But if it's not, like, why are we doing it? And then too often, as you mentioned, they do it. Then like, what? It was just an instant fix of you buying the car. But then what? What's next? How's that bringing you more value?
Yeah. Look, I think lifestyle inflation is such a thing. There is a very big difference between rich and wealthy. Very big difference. Someone may, social media sucks for this. Like you see people with their bloody metallic balloons and they're like 100K months or 50K months. I never let any of my clients have a fucking metallic balloon. Do better. Because it doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean anything. And with social media, you're only seeing, like, everyone knows this, but everyone forgets it. You're only seeing one little snippet of their shit. I bet if I saw their bank account, it would tell a completely different story. If I did a financial audit, it would tell a completely different story to what they portray. So it really is, it's your financial situation, your financial philosophy is you, and you stay in your lane. It's got nothing to do with anyone else, right? The amount of very wealthy people I know yet are dead inside. Dead inside. And I think, to be quite honest, this is where, true wealth, getting good with money, is a lot more than just, say, growing your net worth. Okay? Because money is actually a very shallow motivator, right? Like it's the problem with, I guess the problem with financial wealth is it's an external goal with benefits. And money buys things, right? But money does not buy happiness. Okay. It can build you a prettier prison, but it can't get you out of prison. Prison being here, your mind, prison being your heart. So it can buy you a pretty one, can't get you out of it though. So I guess this, when I say it buys you things, you can get the car, you can get the house, you can have, fake numbers on a fucking screen to show a big bank account, right? But money in a bank is not your money. Okay, it's fake. Unless it's in assets, then it's real. But you do know the moment your money is left in a bank, you are now the bank's investment fund. If people understood what banks do with their money, you wouldn't keep it in a bank. You would put it in assets, right? You would put it in assets. So I think, like if you're motivated, like to succeed in building wealth, guys, you want to be driven by internal goals that are deeper than just the external trappings of money, right? You want to cause a purpose that will bring transformation to your life, right? And will drive you, it'll motivate you, it'll drive you deep enough to overcome any of the obstacles that stand between where you are now and the goal, right? Whether that's financial freedom, whether that's, I don't know what your goals are, whatever it is, right? Mine is always, ever since I was 25, my goal was to be completely financially free by 35. I'm 33 right now. I achieved it 2 years earlier. Money coach can't math. Right? So you really, like, you want to, you're, I guess what I'm trying to say is internally driven goals or value-driven goals. This is what I'm talking about, right? For me, like when someone says their goals and I want, yeah, I want freedom. It's like, okay, but define that. People want to be successful, yet they haven't defined success. People are so scared of failure, but they haven't even defined failure, yet it cripples them. What does it mean to you? What does it mean to you? Like for me, freedom is one of my highest values, right? But what freedom means to me is quite personal. It means it's freedom from limiting beliefs, right? This to me is the liberation from the constant constraints of self-doubt and societal conditioning. That's freedom. It's freedom to question and challenge the status quo, right? That is me to a T. Like there's a reason I'm called the rebel with wealth, right? I'm here to question. I'm here to challenge, right? I value the ability to explore unconventional ideas, different perspectives, right? Intellectual independence, to think for my fucking self, right? People know how to think. Well, people know what to think, sorry. They don't know how to think, right? And so, it's freedom to make conscious choices. It's freedom from material obsession, right? To me, wealth, money, having all the things isn't about accumulating material possessions or just chasing after money for its sake, right? My insight with my journey has really taught me that true freedom actually comes from transcending the obsession with wealth and realizing that happiness is not found in the material riches. It's found when I get to cuddle up to my husband. He's my best mate. It's found when he gets home from work every day and I'm so excited to see him. That to me is where happiness is. It's like when I actually get to be with my friends and my family and I'm not stressed about money, I'm not stressed about work. Money can give you those things, right? But you've got to get your shit in order to feel that. I'm chasing the feelings. I'm not chasing the things.
And I feel as if, speaking of feelings, I feel as if people are doing it the opposite. They're thinking of what they want to achieve instead of actually, as you mentioned, diving deeper into having an understanding of what it is that you value and how's that money going to make you happy. And it's so interesting that we're talking about this and, bringing it back to the start of the conversation. It's really having more of that analysis of what you value and how is money showing up in your life. What are some qualities that someone who is feeling shameful, playing the blame game, or just has that fear around money, how can they change those qualities to better their financial approach or potential with money, whether it's through, running a business or working for someone or changing their finances from being in a bank to assets?
The qualities I look for in someone, or self-honesty is the first part. You've got to get honest, right? And I know that sounds like really bloody simple, and actually, like, can it just be that simple? Because people aren't honest because they're avoidant. Money shows up as a, like if we think about why do we avoid money conversations, right? You've actually got to get to the root causes of avoidance, right? Because the avoidance, it's deep rooted psychological shit. It's social shit, right? So you may avoid money because you've got fear of judgment, right? You feel really shit and shame about your situation. So you don't go and speak to anyone because you feel so like you're going to get judged, right? You think you should know better by now. So lack of financial literacy. Okay. Obviously the school system is set up so it's like, go and study the school system and figure out why, who created it. I'm not going down this rabbit hole right now because go look at who created it, right? But I'll give you a little tidbit of wisdom, right? The guy who created it basically said, I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers, right? And you wonder why we're not taught this stuff at school. You're not supposed to, right? So you as a fully functioning adult, even with all your shit from your past you can't change, Future's yours to create by what you do now. Where you're at in life right now is a result of the past. So if that is so uncomfortable, do something about it. That's your responsibility now. So sure, your parents may not have taught you, school may not have taught you, but now the onus is on you. So be honest and take some responsibility. Stop blaming the government, stop blaming your work, stop blaming your partner, right? And just take some responsibility and get your head out of your ass and get honest with, okay, what do I know? What do I not know? Do I know how debt works? Do I even know like how interest rates works? Go to fucking Google. Right? Go to Google, go to YouTube University and learn. All these skills that require us to succeed, you can honestly learn for free. You can learn for free. Like even the stuff I teach, right? My mentor actually said this to me. She's like, SJ, all of your stuff, everyone's stuff, no one's stuff is special. If people want to know how to get fit, they can YouTube that. Right? People want to know, like, there's plenty of stuff on TikTok. I learned so much from TikTok. I limit myself to 10 minutes a day because it's a thing. I set a timer. But everything you want to learn, you can actually learn for free. However, there is a big difference between choosing someone to learn from because they've been there, they've done it, they've cultivated, they are that person. That's where I seek so much value in mentorship and coaching. Right? It's who I want to learn from. So it's honestly about taking responsibility, like, and the thing with people being avoidant is it's really important to kind of recognize that avoidance does not neutralize the impact, right? It pushes it so much deeper. It amplifies it. It makes the silence really fucking loud, right? Your avoidance doesn't erase anything. It buries it. Okay. And when it's buried, it's festering into a bigger problem than what it needs to be. So I think that would be like my roundabout kind of answer to that. It's just, the cost of, like, weigh up the cost of you not sorting this out. What does the future look like? Like, do a little timeline on yourself. If you were to do everything you're doing now in 5 years' time, what's your situation like? I love the future predictions. Like, fuck, if I don't get my shit together, it's going to be the same, if not worse, because of how the money situation in the world's going. Money is devaluing. It's worth nothing, right? If I don't learn about different assets, if the RBA, Reserve Bank of Australia, is talking about digital coin and you're not researching that, interesting. I find that interesting. Everything that we hear it's what I like to call hidden in plain sight. They're telling you you've just got the blindfold on. You've got the earplugs in. Take them out, take it off and listen. Choose information over ignorance. Don't pull the I don't know how card, it's too hard card. Like, you're an adult. Take some responsibility, I suppose. Yeah.
And as you mentioned, it like goes back, that avoidance is also due to the school system as well. Like, I'm not here to blame it, but when we're not getting that taught, of course, so many of us are still avoided and having those poor relationships with food because we haven't been taught that, we don't know. So hence when it comes on TV or on the radio, on your Spotify podcast, and the podcast we're talking about it right now, and you're like, I have no fucking idea what they're talking about. As SJ said, like, search it, Google it, go on fucking TikTok, figure out what it's all about. And as you mentioned, it's constantly evolving. So if we're not evolving with the system, as you mentioned, and you've really like put an imprint in my head right now going, okay, well, if you are in the same position as you are right now, and it's going to be the same in 5 years, are you going to be happy with that? Yes or no? If no, like, what changes need to be implemented?
Yeah. Yeah. You now have awareness. You now get to make a choice whether you change or stay the same. And you have to be responsible for that. It's when someone says to me, I don't know how, I say, figure it out. Ask someone. Ask someone who does know how. Hire someone. Read a book. Don't read money books because I feel like they're very outdated. They're not up to date with, sure, read money books, but, for example, like digital coins, digital currencies are going to be very prominent in the very near future. If you think about banks no longer accepting cash or cash withdrawals. Hello, what is the alternative? Digital. If the Reserve Bank of Australia, there was this map that I saw. I don't even know where I saw this, but it was basically on all the countries around the world and their stages of digital currency implementation and where they're at. And some countries have like rejected it, like Serbia, the bosses, the lords, they've rejected it. They're like, no, we're not doing this. Australia, we're like the next level before. You know, UK, Australia, America, New Zealand, we're like the stage before it's here. Right. So it's like, what are we doing to educate ourselves on that? And it's not good enough to say, I knew nothing about it, because actually Reserve Bank Australia has told you that they're working on a digital coin. Banks, the big four banks, are talking about no longer accepting cash. So what are you going to do? You know, they're telling you. They're literally telling you. So, you know, another podcast topic, I suppose, on the digital side of things, but it's important. So do something to learn about it. You know, like sorting your finances is actually not rocket science.
I reckon everyone needs to listen to this podcast at least 5 times for it all to sink in, because the gold nuggets that you've shared with us today is something that's going to be so valuable for a lot of people to reveal what their relationship is like with their finances due to their psychology, due to their trauma, due to, you know, anything that they've experienced with life, and how can they start confront their fears. And as you mentioned, it's up to the individual to confront those fears. Like no one's going to push you if you're not going to push it yourself to do it. It's the same with training at the gym. You know, your personal trainer can be there for the 45 minutes in the session, but it's up to you to do the work outside of those sessions as well.
Exactly right. Yeah, I mean, it's you know, how you figure this out. If you wanted some like how-to things, it would be, I guess, a couple of questions you could ask is like, to evaluate your current spending, look at your recent spending patterns, right? So the first step, I guess, would be figure out your values. If you don't know what your values are, go to Google and type in core values. You know, there's actually assessments, like Dr. John Martini has an assessment, right? You could easily go and do that. And what's really interesting is you can say you value something, but you're actually not living that. Like when people say they value health, yet they get pissed on the weekend. I'm like, you're literally drinking a neurotoxin, but you value health. Like, do you? Like, I don't drink. And I just find that so interesting that like look in your life to say where you value something and then where you contradict it. That's the first step, I suppose. And then to like, once you like start by figuring out your values, map out some goals, short-term, mid-term, long-term, you know, see where your values fit with that, right? Because when people actually don't know their values, that's when they feel lost. That's when they feel miss out alignment. That's when they feel like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I just don't even know who I am. It's because they're not living by their values. And for me, your values, it's like your lighthouse. You know, it's like the lighthouse that's guiding all the ships around. You know, your values are your compass. So it's they can range from anything from like security, freedom, family, education, whatever, right? Money. If you want money, make sure that's in your value system. People always leave money out. Okay. You want to look at your current spending and you know, get the highlighter, do the activities, do all the things with that. You want to ask yourself, does my spending reflect what I truly value, or am I spending things that don't bring me long-term satisfaction, but instead instant gratification? Right? What was the, whenever you go to buy something, you could literally just ask yourself something so simple of, what emotion am I trying to soothe here? That'll put your card back in your pocket.
I'm literally laughing because I ordered a milk frother the other day from Amazon. Yep. And to be honest, I could most likely live without it. And I used it for the first time last night and I did a fucking shocking job. I poured, my whole drink just poured everywhere. And I was just like, fucking hell, why did I buy this?
Look, they do make life easier. I have an espresso one and do love it. So yeah, maybe just don't feel it so high.
Yeah. I love the fact that I want to finish off with the values side of things, because again, if it's like an instant gratification around spending, I find shopping is buying clothes, shoes. You know, I was a massive spender when I was in my early 20s, when I had that debt, where I was constantly just buying the next fashionable label, the next shoe that came out, because again, I was thinking that's what made me look and feel successful. And like, look where it took me, to fucking 30 grand of debt. And it's just like, do we want to live that, or do we want to live by other values?
Exactly. Values, like I said, it's your compass. So asking questions, you know, when it comes to setting goals, value-based goals, um, it's asking questions like what financial goals will help me live according to my values, right? That's the next step. How does each of my financial goals connect to my core values? So once you've done that, that's when you can then create a value-based spending plan, because you can then allow your resources, time, energy, money, right? In a way that's prioritizing your values. Now, this obviously doesn't mean that you can't have fun, or you don't spend money on non-essentials, but just the majority of your spending is aligning with your values. So it's, how can I adjust my budget to allocate more to the areas that reflect my values? Are there areas of spending where I can reduce or eliminate because it doesn't align with my values? And then it's just constantly refining, auditing, right? Auditing is one of my favorite things to do. And when you're auditing, you're going through your statements and it's like, am I staying true to my spending plan? What adjustments do I need to make to better align my spending with my values? And then in everyday life, it's just about being conscious and mindful of each of those purposes. Whenever you buy, it's like, cool, what emotion am I soothing here? Am I feeling some kind of way? So I'm going to go soothe myself with that. But then it's also the other question of does this align with my values, with my goals? Is buying this going to put me backwards? Right? Like with the luxury things, if you can't buy 3 to 5 of that thing, you don't have enough money to be spending on that. Period. Right? And then it's just, obviously you're a human. So this is why traditional finance, it doesn't factor in the human side. You need to allow some flexibility. Things are going to come up. Sometimes priorities change. But if you've got your core values in the forefront of everything you do, you're going to just feel like life is just going to feel so much cleaner for you.
I love that. And as you mentioned with the values, you know, too often life does change. We do change as we progress, and your values may change over time as well. And as you mentioned, like doing that audit is so beneficial. And that's where I feel that a lot of people, and myself, I can, you know, speak truthfully, that we fall behind not having enough audits and then getting lost amongst the fucking noise.
Yeah. Yeah. Audit your life, audit your friend circle, audit your hubby. You know, one of my clients just finished up working with me and dumped her boyfriend. Didn't mean for that to happen, but she learned a lot from auditing.
I feel that's like a whole nother conversation with the podcast, is not settling for shitty relationships, and not just intimate relationships, friendships as well, even like jobs, whatever. It's just like, again, like this could be a whole nother conversation.
Yeah. Your network is your network is your net worth. If you're hanging around 5 broke people, you're bound to be the 6th one. Raise your standards. It's not to say that your friends are shit, maybe they are, but are they conducive with what you value? Are they conducive with your goals? That's what you've got to ask. And then you've got to have the discipline to just be like, hey, you're not going to see me for a couple of months. I'm just honing down on this. I'm here if you need me. You know, everyone's on their own journey. Doesn't mean you have to cut everyone off, but you do have to have boundaries. You do have to have standards, especially if people aren't as healthy for you, but you can still love them. You know, I always say, love your family, choose your friends.
Mm.
You know? Cool.
Yeah, love that. SJ, thank you so much for joining me today. I know a lot of our listeners are going to get a lot of value. I sure fucking did. And I know I'm going to be replaying this a lot. For those who want to follow SJ's journey, I will place her contact details in the showcase notes, but make sure that you follow her on Instagram, because she has a flora of free fucking information there. And she also has a really cool YouTube video about trading psychology, if that's something that you want to get into, and also a masterclass around leadership too. So yeah, if you guys are keen, fucking go down that rabbit hole.
Welcome to my world.